Welcome to the RCR Mobilist. I'm Martha DeGrasse, and our topic today is the Telecom Talent War. We've been looking at the intense competition for software talent in the telecom and wireless space, and today we're focusing on the competition and cooperation between large companies and startups. Our sponsor today is the Competitive Carriers Association, and we have 4 guests. Our first guest is Liz Gasser. She's VP of Business Operations at Qualcomm Labs. Welcome, Liz. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Martha. Pleasure to be with you today. It's good to be with you on the webcast. So, as Martha said, my name is Liz Gasser. I'm VP of Business Operations for Qualcomm Labs, and Qualcomm Labs is a subsidiary of Qualcomm Incorporated, and we actually exist as the company's incubator subsidiary, if you will. We focus on developing commercial opportunities and new businesses around very early stage technology. And we started about 2 years ago now with a vision. How could we collaborate to change the way in which big companies pursue very early stage young businesses and borrow a little bit from startup culture, from lean entrepreneurial methods, and also from the venture community and venture style funding. And over the past couple of years, we've incubated approximately a dozen businesses. Approximately a third of them have been shut down and otherwise pivoted. A third of them have gone on to become products in other parts of the company. I'll talk about a couple of those. And a third of them are still going, still hot, still live, if you will, within the labs. So the companies you might recognize that have come out of the labs or the lines of business, one is a product called Skifter, which is a media shifting platform, and that transitioned into our Atheros subsidiary. And Qualcomm Life, which is our wireless health subsidiary, focused on helping bring wireless technologies to bear on the cost and complexity of healthcare today. And so we're very proud of those early exits. A couple of the businesses who are still in the works within the labs that you might hear us talking about, one is a contextual awareness platform called Gimbal. It helps bring sensors and context and geofencing, interest sensing to bear in a platform where mobile application developers can adopt and use those technologies for delivering contextual content, helping meet user needs that way. And then another one we work on is called LTE Broadcast, which is a platform for bringing broadcast capabilities to the LTE 4G network. So before I move on and stop, the other thing I did want to mention and introduce a little bit is we're not just internally focused within Qualcomm. We do work externally with the entrepreneurial community through an initiative called Qualcomm Labs at Evo Nexus, which I did want to spend a few moments on. It came about as we sat and thought about how we could broaden the innovation funnel, how we could work with a broader, diverse range of entrepreneurs on new initiatives. And we established this joint initiative with a local trade group called CommNexus. They do a lot of work here in the San Diego area, and they have a really unique early stage incubator called Evo Nexus. And they're unique in that they have a completely pro bono model. I think they're one of the only places in the nation where you can go to an incubator and they ask nothing in return. They have fabulous space, mentors, access to the investment community, and it's completely free to the companies who participate. So working together, we thought we could do something really great for San Diego. We could come up with a program that would bring some of the areas we're interested in, bring together some early stage seed funding from Qualcomm, and put it in the context of this unique and special incubator. And so that's the program we initiated about a year ago. Together we're really trying to move the tech startup community here in San Diego. We completed our first round middle of last year, and out of that process funded 3 companies. Qualcomm Labs' role in the program is, as companies come into Evo Nexus, we offer them the opportunity to receive seed financing of up to $250,000. And one of the companies we did fund through that process is on the call today, and I think he's probably up next. So I will let FatSkunk speak for themselves.
That's right. We've got Mark Grandcolas, CEO and co-founder of FatSkunk. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for that intro. And Liz, I just want to point out, as a start, we especially like that pro bono model of Evo Nexus. It matters greatly. So I'll start by just giving you my background and then lead into what we are doing at FatSkunk. I'm a veteran of large companies as well as startups. This is my fourth startup, and I've been a senior executive, business development executive in startups as well as large companies, IBM, Sun Microsystems. And I spent 3 years at Xerox PARC. Xerox PARC, like Qualcomm Labs, is a wholly owned subsidiary of a larger company. And my role at Xerox PARC was not a researcher, but in fact it was to find promising research technologies that had a good commercial potential and then commercialize those. And that's where I ran into my co-founder, Dr. Marcus Jacobson, who was a security researcher there at PARC. And together we founded FatSkunk. And FatSkunk is solving the problem of detecting malicious software on wireless devices. Now, you might not think that's a big problem today, but it's about to be a very, very big problem. And all of the technologies that work fairly well for the desktop and server world translate very poorly to the wireless device. So Dr. Jacobson came up with a very unconventional solution that works very deep in the software stack on the device. It's not a piece of software at the application level that watches and chases other software at the application level. It works very deeply inside the device, and it uses the physics, the principles of physics, timing, if you will, to detect if software is on the device. And we've been able to show that we can detect any malware, whether it's active or inactive, and whether it's ever been seen before or not. And in fact, we can dynamically detect rootkits, which are a terrible problem in the PC world. They can typically only be detected after weeks of forensics and after they've done their damage. We can detect those dynamically with a single scan on the phone. So it's very novel technology. We're working very closely with Qualcomm. We're very happy to be in Evo Nexus and to be working with not just Qualcomm Labs, but the Qualcomm product group to bring this technology to market, hopefully in the near future, because it's going to be needed.
Definitely. We hear a lot about malware. One quick question before we introduce our next guest. Once your software detects the malware, is it able to inactivate it?
We can detect it and characterize it today. There are various methods to inactivate the software. At this point in time, our product doesn't remove the software, but the most important problem to solve first is to detect it, and as soon as you can, and then to characterize it. So that's the first and foremost problem. Removal is next.
Great. Okay, our next guest is Art King. He is Director of Enterprise Services and Technologies at SpiderCloud Wireless. Welcome, Art.
Thank you, Martha. It's a pleasure to be here. I've got a kind of a different background compared to the rest of the colleagues on the call here. I come from the enterprise space, and I've bounced around between enterprises and also to different startups and resellers. And I just recently came from a 10-year stint within Nike doing mobility and collaboration. And I was offered the opportunity to come to SpiderCloud. It was one of those things that was an OMG moment, mainly because much of my mobile strategies were stunted by the lack of in-building coverage and capacity. And SpiderCloud Wireless is, I think, the first company to come out with something that scales to really large office buildings in a kind of an economical fashion, such that, dreams of mobility architects like me can actually come true. So I'm pretty thrilled to be here, and I see the same kind of thing around talent wars and just the lack of talent, because I've spent quite a bit of time, with future strategy within my last role, and drove up and down the 101 in the valley, talking to people about the future and helping to shape the future. And it's been a real pleasure to be offered the opportunity to come over here when our product is basically pretty complete and going into commercial deployment. So.
Now, Art, tell us a little bit about SpiderCloud's small cell radio network.
So we have a controller-based architecture that connects into the mobile core, and we run a cloud of essentially small cells inside office buildings. We have the HetNet with 3G, Wi-Fi, LTE releasing in Q3, and it solves for a problem that that's unable to be solved, at least at this point in time, with other femto technologies. And I always had problems with getting coverage and capacity because DAS was a board of directors decision because it was so expensive. So I ended up keeping, just struggling with what I had, and telling my operators, please help me, please do something. So it's good to sit on this side of the table. I'm essentially a voice of the consumer, shall we say. Our customer is the mobile operator, but the consumers, the targets downstream enterprises, large facilities or single tenant office buildings, that kind of thing. So it's pretty much an indoor strategy, but with what we're doing with the having an onboard x86 processor and hypervisors and that kind of thing, there's a whole opportunity for innovation to extend the mobile edge out from the operator's core and really make it adjacent to the enterprise instead of being kind of arm's length.
Okay, thank you. And our next guest is Biren Sood. Biren is CEO and co-founder of Vasona Networks. Biren, tell us a little bit about your background and how it led you to found this company.
Yeah, sure. By the way, thank you so much for having me, Martha. Biren Sood, one of the co-founders and the CEO of Vasona. So a bit on my background. I've been primarily a telecommunications startup guy for the vast majority of my career. I've been fortunate enough to join startups very early on that grew and became very large, either public companies or got acquired. We've had two of those experiences, and we're hoping Vasona is our third, at least my third. My background is primarily in working in congested broadband networks and coming up with technologies that let you use that network more efficiently and effectively rather than having to do something more brute force-ish in terms of upgrading and adding just raw capacity. So that's my background. Typically join companies very early on or start them and see them to a successful exit in some form or capacity. A bit about Vasona. So at Vasona, the problem we're focused on is the last mile of the mobile network. We've come up with a very interesting piece of software that is deployed by operators inside the mobile network. And by being at a certain point in the mobile network, we can understand traffic and what's happening on a per cell basis. So we go right down to the cell tower, and we're focused on that network between the devices, the phones, and the actual tower itself. And I think everybody on this call has been in situations where you have too many users on the cell tower, the tower congests, and everyone's experience is subpar. So our technology, our software, goes in the network and manages that congestion event and improves the overall experience for all the users on that congested cell. I guess the one last thing I'd like to, last comment or point I'd like to make about Vasona is we are a software company that's really leveraging the economics of multi-core. So when we started the company in 2010, what we found was the data center market, the enterprise market, was really driving silicon manufacturers like Intel, AMD towards multi-core technology that were taking CPUs, processors, and stamping them out as multiple on a single piece of silicon or single die, and that gave us a lot of horsepower, and it was also very advantageous to the investors that were looking at us because we've come from paths where we had to lay out boards, buy chips, and that got to be very expensive. Now we have the horsepower and the economics to build a telecommunications infrastructure that can be done, without the, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment that's typically been required. We can do it just as a software company and still provide the benefit and the speed that carriers are expecting for line rate technology such as ourselves. So very much a software company that's riding that curve, driven by multi-cores and data centers and enterprise technologies.
Great, thank you. Well, I think all of you work closely with software developers, so I'd like to ask each of you to comment on hiring software talent, the competition for this talent, and what these individuals mean to the success of your business. Liz, would you like to start?
Yeah, happy to. I think for us in software, given that we're a chip company, software is really a powerful way of stimulating the core use cases, the applications, the places where we would like to see our connectivity and our processing capabilities applied. And I think software developers are very valuable to us as a company in that regard. It's challenging a little bit being down here in San Diego, and I know a lot of the very capable software talent is attracted to being in the Bay Area and wants to be up there, and so we have to fight pretty hard, and we do our best to create very compelling experiences, whether we're recruiting at the university level, looking for early career graduating bright software developers, and we have a very comprehensive university program to try and do that. And then we just have to try and be competitive in other ways as we're recruiting later stage software engineers, and we're going head to head with some of the Bay Area giants. But we think what we do offer in that regard is we're at the cutting edge of wireless. We're looking at the very next generation of how you connect people and experiences. Mobility is going to impact every single use case that we can think of and every single aspect of our lives. And I think for us, just being excited about that opportunity and giving talented engineers and software developers the opportunity to go work on those very early stage businesses that will change the world, that are changing the world. I think that's how we seek to differentiate and stay relevant with prospective employees. It really is come here, change the world, and work in a collaborative, dynamic, forward-thinking environment. And the nice beaches and the surf helps as well.
I'm sure you have a lot of companies that want to be part of Qualcomm Labs. Can you talk a little bit about the selection process for these companies?
Yeah, it's very much set up as a collaboration with EvoNexus, the incubator. So they have a twice yearly call for submissions. We look for applications from companies anywhere in the country, but the majority of them do tend to be from the Southern California area. And as part of that, there's several rounds of screening of the initial application. There's a selection committee process. Qualcomm Labs is one member of that committee, which is between 10, 15 people large. And we go through the process of looking at the applications and trying to understand what scale of opportunity is being addressed, what needs are being solved by the business, how they anticipate growing and evolving the company over time. And as companies reach later stages in that process, Qualcomm Labs starts to engage more personally with them, one-on-one, and as we're getting down to the final selection rounds, we'll have discussions with the entrepreneurs about whether we might be able to help them with early stage funding, with access to Qualcomm Labs mentors, and broader collaboration opportunities where we might develop interesting new tech and where they might further our interests in driving new markets. I mean, the three companies we ended up investing in last year, one of which was FatSkunk, and you've heard a little bit about what they're doing in the area of malware, which is obviously critical for mobile. But also the other two we invested in, one was a contextual company called Breadcrumbs, who's trying to leverage geofencing, interest profiling to help you never forget places and to build a more intimate relationship with companies you care about, businesses you care about, places you care about. And the other one was an M2M platform called Aringa, driving the automotive space and looking at how you can manage software updates to vehicles. That's not something we're playing in that layer ourselves in, but we'd love to see that space evolve because connected cars are going to be pivotal in the future, and it's a space we care a lot about. And so overall, the process is set up to be very collaborative, very driven around EvoNexus, the incubator itself, and through that we hope to build some very early stage relationships that can benefit both Qualcomm, obviously, but also the companies we interact with.
All right, great, thanks. Art, what about at SpiderCloud? About how many people work at SpiderCloud Wireless now?
About 106 people, and it's just primarily an engineering organization because we had to solve a very hard problem of small cell mobility. Our engineers are, by and large, a huge mix of hardware, software, and then the SEs out in the field that are doing a ton of work with the operators. So we had, our project, because it took a very long time to get everything figured out around small cell mobility. We have a lot of people that we've retained that are, still, when you look at them, they're fully vested and they could move on, but they're choosing to stay with the project because of the intellectual interest behind it. And I completely agree with Liz. I came here on a change the world kind of mindset, and I think that attracting people, all things being equal as far as salary and benefits and that type of thing, I want to do something to make a difference. And I think that many of the people that we brought in kind of catch fire and see what we've done with our tech, and want to harden it, want to improve it, want to make it better. And that's key to getting people from larger companies, and also potentially attracting other talent. The other thing that I've seen, and that I'm sure we've all seen, is that one person has a network of good friends, and those people will gradually trickle in behind them. If you found the promised land, your friends may all follow you, and people tend to move in networks that way. So the whole network effect around good people is also something not to be underestimated when recruiting talent. Get player A, and B through Z may follow, behind them just based on player A's reputation and, the trust they've engendered in their network.
So you mentioned attracting people because of the opportunity to make a difference when all things are equal as far as salary or benefits. But what about when it's not equal? Are people willing to make a little less to be in an environment like yours?
I think so. There's the motivations vary from person to person, so I can't say it's a blanket statement. But at a personal level, I've taken cuts in pay to go do something interesting, and you have to have the fortitude to do it. And I live in the Pacific Northwest, Portland, Oregon, so you have to be fairly careful about your career moves and stuff because of the way the market moves here. And I've taken salary cuts to go to places that were interesting, with the idea that I live within my means, and it's something that I can do and have the flexibility to do at a personal level. And there's other people that can and will do that kind of move.
Okay, thank you. Biren, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I guess, for us, as a small company, the lifeblood of, from my perspective, any small company is innovation. And for us, it's all about, the only reason a carrier, we sell to large carriers like an AT&T or Verizon or Vodafone, that's who we really target with our software. And the only reason they're going to buy from us is through innovation. So the culture, the kind of people we're really trying to attract in Vasona is all about, innovation. And so we, in order to do that, we've done a number of things. One is, what I think what makes Vasona interesting and what helps us attract talent is really bringing together a bunch of different core competencies in the company. So in order for us to achieve what we're trying to achieve, we had to bring in mobile, rich media, packet processing, etc. And what I found is when you take all these different core competencies and put them together in the same room, you see some very interesting things happen, some very interesting innovations, through this combination. And I think that helps attract the right kind of people within our company, because it is hard out there. We're in Silicon Valley, but we do all of our development in Tel Aviv. And I got to tell you, Tel Aviv is not much better than Silicon Valley right now in terms of attracting talent. It's compressed everywhere in terms of getting good talent. So, we work hard in terms of having an innovative environment where people can feel like they can change the world, to our perspective or what they've said. But also doing something, that where their talents can be combined with other people's talents to create something larger. Bringing, I like to use the example of chocolate and peanut butter. Put them together, and you got something really, really special there. So if we can bring all these different people together, I think we can create something innovative and keep that edge. One last comment I'd like to make is, we're a telecom company, but we use agile methodology for software development, which is pretty radical for a telecom company. Most telecom companies use waterfall mechanism or methodology, which is pretty typical for companies building big boxes and hardware, et cetera. So that's also helped us a lot too, adopting these new methods that are traditionally web-based methods of development over into into a more traditional environment like telecommunications infrastructure. That also helps us attract the right kind of talent into the company. So those kinds of things really help us.
Now, about how many people work at Vasona Networks now?
Right now we're about 30. We did just announce our Series B last week, and so we'll be growing our company. We're about 30 people at this point in time.
And I'm guessing you have a mix of people that are sort of serial entrepreneur startup individuals and people who have a lot of large company experience. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do. I think everybody in the company has had great success in either building small companies into large ones or being successful at large companies. So it's a good mix. It's different competencies, different levels of companies in terms of the size and scale they've been at, and putting all that together, I think lets us do what we can do.
Mark, I know that you have a large company background. I think you mentioned Sun and IBM. Is that true also for some of the other people that work at FatSkunk?
Partially, yes. The co-founder of our company, Dr. Marcus Jacobson, also worked at RSA Labs at one point, Xerox PARC, of course, and AT&T Bell Labs. One of our VP of engineering also came from, he started out at IBM. So yeah, we do have a mix.
And how would you say you attract people who might otherwise go to a larger company with maybe a little better compensation? How do you attract those people to FatSkunk?
Right, yeah. Well, the way I approach it is to treat them like they're an investor. So when I go to pitch to an investor, I pitch the full picture, the problem we're solving, the size of the market, how they can get rich. And I do the same thing with my technical talent. So I actually treat them just like a VC. I give them our VC pitch. So what I'm selling to them is a very, very big vision. And I'm looking for people that are excited to pursue a big vision. And they're willing to do whatever it takes, even take a salary cut to pursue that big vision and actually make it happen. So that's the first way I approach it. Now, we're a little bit different in the fact that we were founded in Silicon Valley, which is where I live. In fact, this morning I'm working out of my home in Silicon Valley, and I apologize for being on the phone, but the city of San Mateo showed up in front of my house right when this call started to cut some trees with chainsaws and grinders. So they had to wait until now to do that. So I thought, to spare you all the noise, I would do this. But we are expanding in San Diego because the talent we need to implement our magic is actually easier for us to find in San Diego than in Silicon Valley. We need people that understand the telecom stack, the communication stack extremely well in the chipset, and that understand how to deal with the chip modem in order to implement our software technology and to make it work. Those people are actually easier for us to find in San Diego, and then the way I track them is to pitch them the big vision, as I explained earlier. But the talent is, finding it's always a challenge, but if you look and you network, eventually you can find it. And people are, the kind of people we're looking for are the ones that are really attracted by a big challenge or the big opportunity, and they believe in the credibility that we've established so far. And they're willing to, take a risk and come on board. I always also point out to people when I'm recruiting that, in their space, it's pretty much a full employment environment. So they can afford to take a risk for a year with a startup, and if it crashes and burns on a Friday, on a Monday they can be working at someplace, a tall building. It's literally that easy for them. So in some sense, they're not taking much of a risk, actually, to go with a startup, and I always point that out to them.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I think that same point might encourage some of those same people to try to start their own companies. So can you talk a little bit about how you attract the individual who's maybe trying to decide whether to join your startup or maybe start his or her own startup?
Yeah, well, sometimes we do encounter that. In fact, I've lost some really good talent where, somebody said, well, I'm going to go do my own startup. And, that's you know, that's a tough one to compete against. If they've got a dream, you're selling your dream versus their dream. All you can do is just represent, you know, the opportunity that you offer to them, and hope it's exciting enough. And that's pretty much all you can do to try and recruit somebody who has their own dream that they've decided to go off and chase. You know, there are times when I point out to people, if you come up to Silicon Valley, what you'd find is there's actually quite a few people working in tall buildings for full-time. They have full-time employment in these tall buildings, but on the side they're working on their startups. They're working on their dream to see if they can get it going. And I always point out to people when I'm in that situation that, look, you can work at FatSkunk, and you know, in your spare time, you can not forget your dream. But I try to convince them that we've actually gone further in removing the risk in our big picture than they have. And so, you know, we can offer them a salary and, you know, offer them some flexibility to keep their eye on that dream that they have. And that's about the only way you can try to compete for that in that situation.
Art, I saw you nodding. It sounds like maybe you've had some similar conversations.
Yeah, I have. I think the other thing that's interesting is the empowerment and the lack of bureaucracy that a smaller organization has, where if you see it, you own it, and if you have a solution, people are open to the solution. Where you know, one engineer can wander into another, whiteboard it out, and get something done without a large bureaucracy kind of ratifying the approach, and you know, large armies of product managers trying to get every single decision and thought in alignment with the master plan. It's kind of a blast at a smaller level to be extremely empowered and able to, you know, influence long-term direction. It's very satisfying from that perspective.
If I could pick up on that,
Sure.
because it's interesting, because within a large company, you're absolutely right. There are layers and layers and layers that you generally have to interact with. And Qualcomm Labs started as a kind of an experiment in how you change that inside a very big corporation, and how you intentionally and incredibly consciously keep the teams as small as you can, keep the teams as hungry as you can, keep the teams nimble, you know, looking at two in a box, you know, founder methodologies, how you take a lead business person and a lead engineer, put them together and say, okay, yes, chocolate and peanut butter, let's make that happen. Love that example. And so I'm smiling a little bit as you're talking, because I think you get that naturally inside of a startup. Within a big company, if you want to try and emulate, there's a lot of feeling like a duck that goes on in that process. You know, it looks like everything's sailing along the top, and you're paddling furiously to maintain that cultural environment as best as you can against the forces of large companies, which do have certain requirements and pressures and things you need to conform to. And so it's actually really interesting dialogue. And then what we have found in doing that, as you bring in, you know, agile methodology, and we have some teams who use agile even here inside of Qualcomm Labs. And then as you bring in entrepreneurs and, you know, entice them to come in and work within the labs environment for a while, you don't always get all the way there. You don't always fully embrace the methodology, but something really interesting does happen. There's a certain mental flexibility and agility that starts to creep in, and, you know, your waterfall process, you know, maybe now there's a little more use of stories and personas up front, and there's maybe a few more cycles of customer testing and feedback that have suddenly crept in. And, you know, those corporate processes that originally had 8 layers to them, well, maybe we just found a way to put 4 in there. And so actually having the opportunity to test how you create that environment, and then to work with all of the fabulous entrepreneurs we've been exposed to through you know, things like EvoNexus and our work there, and you know, working with people like Mark, it's interesting to see what happens to the blended culture as a result.
Absolutely. Biren, do you have something to add? I saw you nodding.
No, I was just, I guess I was resonating a bit with Mark's comment about, you know, how do you retain, you know, we find obviously quite often, you know, people that come to Vasona, they're innovators. They are, you know, coming up with new ideas, new methodologies, and they often want to start their own thing. and how do you get those people to come on board your company and pursue your vision or your combined vision rather than what they want to go off and go do. And actually, that happened to me very early on in my career where I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to start something up, and I went to a company. The company was about 20 people, 30 people, and I was talking to the CEO, and he asked me, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I want to start a company." He said, "Well, while you're trying to figure it out, why don't you join us?" I said, "Yeah, why not?" I spent 8 years there. We did an IPO. So I think it. I think those sort of things can happen, and he gave me an opportunity to build my resume, to have a success, and then now to go. When I went to Sand Hill Road or I went to the investment community, I had something to kind of build from, and they gave me a chance to actually learn things and now apply them, to my startup. So that's something that I think that can apply. And I've seen that even here at Vasona, where I do have younger guys come in and say, "Hey, I really want to start something up." I say, "Well, why don't you learn something from us for a period of time and see how it's done, and you'll get your shot as well."
Yeah. Now, an IPO is obviously a great outcome for a startup. Another common outcome is to be purchased by a larger company, and then all this great entrepreneurial talent can end up working in a big company. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen there? Does that sometimes lead to some attrition in these companies after they're bought, I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the trick here, so having seen it a few times, and this is something I'm still trying to figure out. I'm looking forward to that opportunity in Vasona where, we've become a big company and, we're trying to solve that problem, but it's a tough one. I mean, when you're small and you got a group of people that are pursuing a common vision and you have a very open environment to go out and create, a lot of great things happen. But when you're in the telecommunications space, those great things have to be backstopped by some methodologies and processes, because that's just how telecom operators work. You can't just, test cycle something for 2 weeks, drop it in their network and hit 5 nines. Well, it doesn't work that way. So, it's a very interesting transition for a company to go from high innovation to product to scale, and how do you retain innovation throughout that process? And to me, that's the trick. If you can maintain innovation, you can retain the talent, because that's what attracts the early folks to the company in the first place. And that's the transition, and that's the trick. I'm not saying I've got that figured out yet, but I'm looking forward to figuring that out. So.
All right, great. Well, we've got a few minutes left, and I'd like to use that time to ask each of you to talk a little bit about the most exciting thing that you're working on over the next 6 to 8 months. And Liz, would you like to start?
Wow, that's a very big question. Not quite sure where to start. I think a few things. I think at a labs level and what we're trying to do here culturally, I'm just fundamentally looking forward to continuing to hone the process, to figure out how we can really accelerate commercial innovation and taking tech into the hands of users, no matter what space we're tackling. Really looking forward to the coming year with EvoNexus. We just closed our January round. We had 130 applications, and we're in the process of going through all of those. We'll be doing another round mid-year. So that's exciting. So really keen to see what kind of companies we get to meet through that process. And then just more generally, I think as we look at where mobile can go and where we can create powerful new use cases, there's an awful lot of great things happening in the Internet of Everything space, connected machines, robotics, and connectivity everywhere. And there's terrific use cases and applications of those capabilities, and we're spending a lot of time scratching our heads and saying, okay, how can we really get the world connected and take this from being a slide and a pipe dream to a pervasive Internet of Everything. And that's something Qualcomm, you'll see Qualcomm as a whole talking about, and it's something we are spending mental energy on within labs, thinking about, well, what does that mean for other parts of the business. So
we'll keep an eye on it. Thank you very much. Art, do you have something to share about what's up next for SpiderCloud?
Commercial deployment, just commercial deployment in a big way. And I think the other thing that is personally on my plate is a substantial amount of work with some of the influential enterprises to continue to bring back compelling use cases, both to our operators, but also potentially compelling use cases to other software firms at a global level who can build the apps that will reside and execute on our platform or that are complementary with the platform. So there's a substantial amount of work to do with just enterprise guys, and then just scaling commercially and going live. So like Liz, I'm recklessly optimistic about the transformational powers of mobile, and I think most enterprises' mobile strategies are very, very simple. They're basically, I want to remove all the fixed assets off my desk that are tied to a person, and I want to move all the software out of my computers that are tied to a person and into the handset. And it's a very exciting future we're all headed towards. And it's what we're doing down at the plumbing layer. All of us on this call are kind of invisible under the covers, but at the end of the day, we're making a lot of people happy with the devices they're carrying in their hands.
That's right. Biren, what's the most exciting thing for the next 6 months at Vasona?
Yeah, so we're really excited. We've announced our Smart Air 1000, our product that goes in the network and provides this great experience for users on congested cells, and we're going to be heads down and focused on our trials and deployments and bringing the benefits of the software to carriers that we're working with and their subscribers. So that's our big focus for the next 6 to 9 months.
Okay, and Mark, can you still hear us?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
So for us, over the next 6 months, I'll list a couple of things that are most exciting to us. Number one, we have a Series A term sheet on the table right now, so closing that would be exciting to us. But even so, we've still got some projects. One of them with Qualcomm, where what we intend to do is show that you can actually dynamically detect a rootkit that has corrupted an otherwise established secure device. So in other words, we're going to show that other technologies already available would declare a device safe to stream a movie, but then if you use our technology, you can actually determine that that is not a safe device and it's been rootkitted, and that is something that the industry hasn't been able to see before. And so we should be able to show that within the next few months to the world with Qualcomm. So that's one exciting thing, the Series A term sheet. And then we're also working on a potential government project. Everything I hear about the mobile world, and I've been in the mobile world for a long time, is the United States is highly connected and certainly leveraging the advantages of mobile, both in the enterprise and consumer world. But there's nation states out there that intend to disrupt that entirely. And those nation states have cyber warriors, which are very, very capable in their attacks. And in some cases, they have nothing to attack against. North Korea is a good example. They actually have a tremendous cyber warrior community that's very capable, and they don't have a grid. We can go and attack if they attack ours. They don't have a banking system. We can also bring down if they bring ours down. So we're seeing a lot of activity focused in this area that is proving to be potentially very exciting for us. So I can't say more than that, but we see an exciting future going forward here in the next 6 months. And I should add, our plan is to be commercially ready within 6 months.
Can you talk a little bit about your business model?
Sure. The software that we employ, so we are a software company, and we have a client and a server. And our client is a very, very tiny piece of software that gets embedded in the device at the time the device is manufactured. And that client does its magic when it's invoked and asked to do a scan. It can do it in a very short amount of time, and it communicates with a back-end server. And we don't monetize by selling the client. We give the client away free to chipset vendors or handset makers or tablet makers, anybody building that device with a wireless connection. And then what we do is we sell connections to the back-end server that determine, if the device is clean or not. And in the event it's clean or dirty, you go from there. And that's what our back-end servers handle. So we sell those connections at $2 a month per user. And that's how we monetize.
Okay, great. Mark Grandcolas, FatSkunk, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Liz Gasser from Qualcomm Labs, thank you for making the time today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Art King, SpiderCloud Wireless, we'll keep an eye on everything. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And Biren Sood, Vasona Networks, thank you for joining us on RCR Wireless News today.
Great. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you all. This will conclude our webcast.